3, 2. And we should be live for the Steelers Depot Monday live stream here on June 21st. Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate it. Here answering any and all of your Steelers questions for the next hour, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Let me go ahead and pull up the stream on my end. And while I do that, I will introduce Dave Bryan. Dave, how you doing?
Happy Monday. I'm doing fine. How is everybody?
Hope everyone else is doing well. And we've kind of hit now the official dead zone of the NFL season, about a month, almost a month to the day. I think tomorrow is the expected, July 22nd report date for the Steelers. Still nothing official on when or where they will report. Hopefully, find that out by the end of the month. I think we're all anxious to hear that news, including Mike Tomlin. But we'll jump into the questions here. And again, be sure to ask your questions in the chat below. Let me know if you guys can hear us and audio and everything like that is fine. It should be, but let me know if there's any sort of issue with my voice or Dave's voice or anything like that. If you want a guarantee of your question to be asked and answered, because sometimes the chat will get really busy, be sure to send us a super chat and you'll move to the top and front of the line. But let's get to the questions right now. Garrett says we sound great, so thank you for that. We'll go to the first question here from Devin Snowden, who says, "Is Trey Turner worth it? He was on the worst O line and rated the worst guard." Yeah, Trey Turner visiting the Steelers on Friday. Appears he left without a deal, so unlikely he signs with the Steelers, but who knows what will happen there. So, Dave, just your reaction to the Trey Turner visit and to Devin's question about would he be worth it?
Look, this is classic Kevin Colbert trying to build the bottom end of the roster. This Malik Hooker, I mean anybody else that they bring in this time of year. It's not uncommon for the Steelers once you get into July and on to potentially add. What was the research that I did a couple of weeks ago? 2 to 3 on average are added after rookie minicamp takes place. Guys that end up on the roster that actually end up on the initial 53-man roster as well too. So
Hmm.
you're this time of year you're going to probably kick the tires on a few guys, and I think when you look at the depth on the offensive line at the guard position specifically, they could use some help there, right? I mean, J.C. Hassenauer, B.J. Finney, Rashad Coward, that doesn't really, you know, that's upgradable.
Hmm.
As far as Trey Turner goes, is he worth it? I mean, I'd sign Alex if he'd sign a minimum veteran benefit contract. That way, I can cut him for no guaranteed money. Trey Turner, if you go back and look at his tape from last year, it wasn't great at all. Was that could that may have been COVID related? Now he did have a groin injury, I think, starting I don't know week 2, I think against the Chiefs, and then that sidelining for I don't know 6 or 7 weeks. And when you're missing a train and you deal with a groin injury like that, then you try to come back from that. Uh, you're probably not going to be in tip top shape. He
Right.
did have a decent resume, obviously before that, couple all pro and all like that. But he is up there, in age on top of it. There, he obviously is not the same player that he once was. He's missed quite a few games during his career due to injury. So the question is, the question asked, is he worth it? I mean, you got to give me a price to ask me
Right.
what he's worth. I would say $1 million or less. Yeah, probably worth it for depth. I'd hate to sign him and expect him to start 16 games for me along those lines. I think people read way too much into these things and try to make them too much of a if then
Hmm.
type thing. This is merely just Kevin Colbert kicking the tires and trying to make the bottom end of his roster better, if you ask me.
Yeah, I've kind of gone a little back and forth on what this could mean, and of course, the guy hasn't signed, is yet to sign, so this is all much ado about nothing until that changes, if that changes, and history says it won't. Generally, you're right; they do bring in guys from this point on and in camp and things like that. Raven McLeod, a great example of that last year, but rarely are they 28-year-old five-time Pro Bowlers. So this is a heavier resume and a more impressive resume than what is the norm to be brought in this time of season. So you know, my overall thought was they're trying to capitalize on a guy with talent like Trey Turner for someone who's cheap because he's battled injury and the market's cool and stuff like that. So could they capitalize on getting him really cheap and try to get a steal for a season. Maybe that's just the overall idea, to get some really solid depth here. I know a lot of people have asked and probably are asking in the chat right now, and James is right now, about David DeCastro and what that could mean for him. And the speculation, I agree, Dave, has kind of run too rampant on that. Some people saying, he's going to retire, he's got some super serious injury. Dr. Mel's take on that was a really good way to tamp down some of that speculation. But, DeCastro struggled last year, had that injury, has not practiced this spring for whatever reason. So could they at least view that as a potential insurance policy? Because they don't know exactly, is DeCastro nearing the end of his career, last year of his contract, or is he going to be able to bounce back? So could there be some protection there against that? I think that's a possibility.
Look, I mean, you look at the depth of the roster. I mean, same thing with Malik Hooker. I mean, just because Malik Hooker isn't an All-Pro, I mean, he is a talented individual, and he is coming off injury concerns, and he
Right.
is going to be a bottom of the salary type guy on top of it. Look, with both those guys, they probably gave them physicals, wanted to see where they're at.
Sure.
Just for to have the Rolodex full. On top of it, look, if DeCastro, look, I was the one that originally probably wrote way back that there was a possibility, and this was right after the season ended, that I wouldn't be surprised if David DeCastro maybe called it quits. Look, he's good friends with Andrew Luck. He sees Andrew Luck, get out early there. On top of it, DeCastro doesn't come off as a guy that looks like he's too worried about his legacy being defined by his football career. He's made quite a bit of money. He just had, I don't know, what is it? What, he's got two kids now or one? I know he's got at least one. It might have been his second one that he just had. You know, and he's never been thrilled with dealing with the media. He lost his best friend this offseason, and Alejandro Villanueva
Hmm.
leaving via free agency. Obviously, that whole offensive line has a different dynamic in that room right now. However, while I was the one, initially to write that stuff way during the offseason, you would think if David DeCastro was going to have retired,
Right. It
he
would
would
have
have
happened.
retired by now,
Right.
barring something happening during training or whatever, and all like this. I mean, this could be something as simple as David DeCastro still trying to get over some sort of procedure or
Hmm.
something. Now, Mike Tomlin, I believe Mike Tomlin. If there'd been something there more than meets the eye with David DeCastro, I think Mike Tomlin would have said something about it, even though he doesn't have to. Uh, you know, I think everybody's really jumping the gun on this. I think Dr. Mel put it best here. Let's let this thing tamp down a little bit, and
Right.
trying to tie the whole Trey Turner thing into this. I mean, the guy's a free agent. Why would and he's still unsigned. Why wouldn't you bring him in just at
Hmm.
this time of year just to get a look at him?
Sure. No, I think that's the overall and driving reason for it, but I think there could be a couple different layers here. But I agree. I don't expect the Castro to retire. I mean, why would he show up to minicamp if he was going to retire? He'd be at home thinking about that stuff and probably be excused because of it. So I'm not expecting the Castro to pull an Andrew Luck here anytime soon. But could there be concerns about, will he play 16 games this season or 17 games this season? That may be a reason why they want to bring in Trey Turner.
My concern would be my backup my backup guard situation isn't great. I got a guy in
Hmm.
BJ Finney who didn't play at all last year except a handful of snaps on special teams. JC Hassenhauer is not the answer to be a backup guard. Rashard Coward's a converted defensive lineman who's played some at guard and didn't even get restricted tender, did he?
Right.
But by the Bears. So I mean, if you look at that depth chart, I don't care how optimistic of a person that you want to try to be, you can't look at that and say, "Oh man, we should bypass any opportunity to bring in a veteran here to
Hmm.
potentially add depth to that situation
Right.
there."
And the Turner himself, he's been no beacon of good health. He has not played a full 16 game season since 2016, and he's had multiple, I think he's had at least 3 or 4 concussions. He's had knee issues, groin issues, as you mentioned. So there's a lot going on there with Trey Turner where you could not trust him to play all 17 games if hypothetically he signed and if hypothetically he were to start for whatever reason. So, there's that to be considered as well. All right, let's get to the next question here. Good discussion on the Castro and Trey Turner. One here from Mike Adesso, and by the way, Double HH says he can be here for the Q and A's again. So glad you guys and Desmond and everyone else here are hanging out with us till top of the hour. Mike says, "Hi guys, how do you see Najee's preseason touches go? Scaled back or feed him in games? How do you see the running back room touches shake out this preseason? McFarland leading the room." It's a really interesting question, Mike, and I don't know exactly how it's going to go because you need to see Harris in the preseason. He's got to get some work in to just get the NFL experience and speed of the game and just see how he fits and is comfortable with actually executing the play. So there has to be some level of in stadium work, but he's supposed to be your 17 game and hopefully longer than that bell cow this season. It's going to be a really long season for him and hopefully for the team. So you don't want to overwork him either. So I don't really know a great way to describe that. I think they'll play him enough until they've seen enough from him, and hopefully that'll be maybe a little bit less and a little bit more in the first couple of preseason games. But could it be 25 carries? I'm not sure what the number is, but I think once you kind of get a good feel that okay, he's ready for week one, then you start scaling things back.
You got to take your new toy outside and let it get dirty. I'm
Right.
sorry.
But how
Playing
dirty though is the question.
as dirty as it needs to
You're
get
right.
for you
That's
to
what I'm saying.
find out if the toy works and know if
Hmm.
know whether or not you have buyer's remorse. I mean, look, you can't live in your fears, but you also have to be smart at the same time.
Oh,
So,
that was a very good
uh,
Tomlin like answer there.
well, there you go.
That's good.
But you you have to get him work. I mean, it's going to have to be a gut feel on that kind of thing. You know, you're going to have to make sure he knows certain protections and things like that. Obviously, you're going to get a lot of that stuff worked out during training camp and get a good idea on that. And Najee comes off as a smart guy, and globally, I don't think you have to worry too much about him getting him a lot of work. But with that said, I don't think you can live in your fears there and not worry about getting your toy dirty. I mean, as careful as they were with Le'Veon Bell, his rookie season, he still ended up missing the first 3 games or so with
Hmm.
a foot sprain or something like that. So I mean, if the guy stays as conditioned as it looks like he's conditioned now, and has seemed to be on top of that kind of stuff. I'm not saying you give him 100 carries
Right.
during the preseason, but I think he needs to be out there a couple 2 or 3 series, in at least 2 or 3 of the games, and maybe you rest him the last game, something along
Hmm.
those lines. So I don't think they're going to go into it obviously with a pitch count. I think it's going to be more of a feel thing with him.
Yeah, no, I agree with a rookie. You don't have a specific number to put on it. To Mike's second part of the question, who do you think leads the team in touches in terms of running backs in the preseason this year? Who do you think has the most carries?
Oh man, I haven't even thought that much
Yeah,
about it.
well, I
To
mean, we're
be
not going to hold you
honest
to
with
it too
you.
much. You just take a guess. McFarland, Harris, Snell are probably your top three guys.
I mean,
I'll say
got
McFarland.
four. Got four. No, I'll go. I'll go. Benny Snell probably has
Okay.
the most.
Okay, that's fair enough. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean a whole lot. But we'll see what happens. Kaylin Clark says, assuming Juju, Johnson, and Claypool all stay healthy, does James Washington have a role on this team? It seems like Claypool cut into his snaps last season sooner than expected. I would agree with that, Kaylin. He goes on to say, could James Washington be a trade candidate, or would you rather see the Steelers stay 4 deep at wide receiver than pick up a day 3 draft pick? Thanks. Yeah, I would not trade James Washington. I understand maybe the reason behind that, but you want to be really deep at receiver, the way you want to be deep at corner, 4 deep at least at those positions in case and whenever an injury does happen. And I don't think it's worth trading Washington for a fifth round pick, when you're trying to have maybe that last final push to win this season. So I would not trade James Washington unless it was just an overwhelmingly good offer, which I don't think is going to happen.
It would have to be blow my socks off
Yeah, like
type
like
type
Martavis
off.
Bryant. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just don't see that happening. You got a guy that's had a former third round draft pick whose value right now is probably at best a fifth round draft pick. He's in a final year of the contract. A team would really have to really want him or be really in a need to have to come up off of a fifth or higher draft pick for James Washington. And what it's not like he's killing you salary cap wise. So why wouldn't you stay with the depth that uh, for the cheap unless somebody blew your socks off? When it comes out as far as
Hmm.
what his role is going to be. I mean, Right now, he's a fourth wide receiver on the depth chart, as far as I'm concerned. And obviously, he's not going to be a guy that you want out there doing a lot of backside X type stuff or a lot of slot stuff. So he's basically a Z guy that can occasionally move around for you overall. But with all that said, no way do I trade him for a box of Cracker Jacks or a
Yeah.
bag of footballs or anything along those lines, because at some, like it or not, the odds of them needing him to play a game or two of 30 or 40 or more snaps is probably, just the odds are going to be in that favor due
Hmm.
to maybe some sort of attrition or injury or what have you. And I'd much rather have the devil that I know on my team, even though he's going to probably start the season at number 4 on the depth chart.
Yeah, because all it's going to take is one injury to any of those top three to move Washington into essentially a starting type of role. And even without that, even if everyone stays healthy, there's going to be a role for him as a rotational guy, so guys stay fresh, and as a vertical threat, a Z type receiver that can make some tough catches and have those lobster crackers as you talk about. So no, I would not trade Washington unless it was a Martavis Bryant, where some team just started up in the offer over and over again, and it just became too good to pass up. But like I said, doubt that happens. Kalen also says, thanks for everything you do, Dave, and the rest of the Steelers Depot staff do for us. Alex, thank you for being here, Kalen. Really appreciate the support. Dominant Persona says, how much for Houston to sign? I assume you're referring to Justin Houston. I think it's one part money, but also one part opportunity. I mean, this is a guy that's always been a starter in his career. Even last year, where the Colts had 8 sacks. So, would he want to come here to be the number three? I mean, could he work over Highsmith potentially? But I think the Steelers want to have Highsmith as a starting right outside linebacker. So, would he still want to be the backup to run down kicks and punts and play rotational 15 to 20 snaps a game? Probably not. So, I'm not sure what money they could give him to justify that, and the role he would want to accept here.
Barring any type of injury, I don't see a veteran, especially of that age. I mean, it doesn't fit. You go back and look at the Steelers historically when it comes to that. If you're going to bring in somebody like Justin Houston, it's going to be a starter and play a considerable amount of snaps. The Steelers like their backup linebackers, whether it be outside or inside, to play some level of special teams, and Justin Houston ain't
Hmm.
playing those special teams for you.
All right.
So look, obviously, if something happens injury wise, either T.J. Watt or Alex Highsmith, and especially the Watt, if something happens to Watt, you might as well just take the sidewalks and start rolling them on up at that point. But outside of that, it would have to be a minimal contract, and B, you're not going to get anything out of Houston on special teams. So
Hmm.
just because the age and all like that, I think you're more looking at somebody in that 27, 28 year old range, and somebody that can still give you a little bit on special teams value along those lines. So I don't know where people are getting, uh, I got an idea where people are getting some of these names and thinking that there's a good chance that they sign. And once again, nothing's impossible, but I think it would take an injury, especially when
Yeah.
you talk about older guys like Houston.
Right. No, I agree. Apologize to Travis Herco. I should have gotten to your question a moment ago because he sent in a $10 super chat. So thank you so much, Travis, for all your support. And you sent
Thank
a
you,
bunch of
Travis.
super chats. Really, really appreciate it. Very kind of you. His question is, good evening, gentlemen. You probably covered this already, but over under set a 40% which way you're going to say that he gets his issues fixed, and next year Haskins is named the team starter. So I'm not entirely sure the phrasing of the question. So basically, is there a better or worse than a 40% chance Haskins is the starter for next season? I will take the under on that, Travis. I think it's less than 40%, a significantly lower chance than 40% that he is a starter. It's possible, I suppose, but so many things would have to happen. Ben, of course, would have to retire, which I think is still likely at this point. Haskins would have to jump Rudolph, and also just get brought back. He's a restricted free agent, so that's doable, but it still would have to happen. His team would have to not want to go out and sign a vet or not draft a quarterback potentially. So a lot of things would have to happen. Haskins would have to play well enough and fix those issues you talked about. So I'm not going to rule the guy out. I want to see him throw a pass in pads first before we start talking about, is he, just a fool's errand, or is he a Hall of Famer or anything like that? Let's watch the guy first. But I think the odds of him being the starter next season are still pretty low.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably going to come in, and I'm
Yeah.
coming in the same way with you on the under, at least from what I've seen so far. Is it impossible, as they say? No, but we're going to have to see a lot more growth out of him, and we're going to have a lot more than just people saying he can throw a ball through a car wash
Right.
without getting it wet.
So we knew that. We
And
knew he had a good arm. That's not
right, right,
new
right.
information to anyone.
That's not. No, I don't know if you saw on the Twitter machine this afternoon and reposted what Todd Haley had to say after
I did.
2019, and of course people are going to if it doesn't fit the narrative, people are going to cast that out, saying, "Oh, it's only Todd Haley," and that's because. But if you, quite honest with you, Todd Haley nailed it, I think.
Yeah,
Uh,
he did.
if you go back and reread that, and you can find that either on my Twitter feed or on Sports Illustrated article way back in 2019 in April 4th or 5th, around those lines. A lot of the things, you know, that I have said, and I think you have said about Haskins, are some of the same things that Todd Haley said way back there as well too. Now, I mean, get a guy in there. Look, and I wrote this in the article the other day about the relationship that Mike Tom. I think Mike Tomlin's doing everything he can to set up for an amazing turnaround, for a potential amazing turnaround with Haskins. First and foremost, you got to get the guy's head right. You know,
Yeah.
because I mean the guy's been through hell, like it or not. The guy's been through hell the last couple of seasons. Whether some of it being his own doing, some of it being just thrust way too early into being the face of an organization
Hmm.
and the quarterback and all like that. They are setting him up. They are going to give him the best possible chance, I think, to succeed, and that includes having a veteran guy in Mike Salt. I think I think that might be one of the biggest things in Haskins' favor right now. Is he's got a quarterbacks coach there in there, and Mike Sullivan has worked with Eli Manning. I mean, he's what a very structured kind of guy. Because let's face it, once training camp gets over with, who's going to be working with Haskins on more? Who's going to see more of Haskins on a week to week
Hmm.
basis?
Yeah, be Mike Sullivan.
So I think it's obviously the type story and the thing that you root for, because
Hmm.
how nice would it be if the Steelers got a franchise quarterback for the price of an undrafted free agent, and basically they would control him for the next couple of years, as well on top of it there. So it's obviously the thing that you root for, but I think if you're taking a realistic, objective approach to this based on everything that you've seen so far out of Haskins, based on, you know, the the odds and normally what happens in
Hmm.
this type of situation, you'd have to root against that kind of stuff. And once again, we haven't even seen him throw a pass
Yeah.
in a preseason game yet. So at least give us that, and let Alec kind of track him during training camp as well too.
Yeah, I mean, history says the odds of him becoming the next franchise quarterback is low, but it's not impossible. And like you said, let's just see if he makes a team because he's got to beat out Dobbs to do that first. It's no guarantee. Let's watch him throw a pass and get inside the stadium and put on a Steelers uniform with shoulder pads on and all that before we start talking about what he can and can't be. So
I think the biggest thing, and you and I said this right out of the get go, I think as well too with him, make it to training camp, and
right.
then once you make it to training camp, put small lines in the sand, and then accomplish those goals and go from there.
Hmm.
People are looking too far ahead
Really
right
are.
now, worrying about 2022 and all like that. Let's get him to training camp. It looks like that's going to happen. Once you get
Hmm.
into training camp, let's get him to win that outright win that number 3 position. Let's see him play during the preseason. I think you really got to take baby steps with this kid and not get too far out there wondering about if he's going to be the starting quarterback in 2022.
Yeah, no, I echo that 100 times over, Dave. I think that thought is getting lost here in the big picture potential kind of stuff. There's a lot of steps to go before we start talking about some of that potential stuff down the road. So, good question there, though. Derek was asking about Trey Turner as well. Kind of listen back to the conversation Dave and I had at the start of the live stream. He does ask if Turner is center capable. He's not. He's been a guard his whole career. You know, one other interesting. Remember that story you had talked about with Dirk Dawes, thought he was a guard coming out of Kentucky and then moved
Mm-hmm.
to center, and how that kind of maybe this is the same thing for Kendrick Green. I didn't I didn't remember, I didn't realize this until I read it in Bill Carey's book last night. Jeff Hardings was a guard his time in Detroit, and the Steelers moved him to center for the first time ever, and it worked for him too. So not that that means a whole lot, but I thought Hardings kind of another case study as Kendrick Green is someone that played actually in Green played a little bit of center at Illinois, but someone that could make that full time transition from guard to center.
Did he not play any snaps at center at Detroit? I thought he
No,
played.
well, according to Cowher's book and just a brief bio on Harding's Pro Football Reference page, it always listed him as a guard, and Cowher said he had never taken a snap at center before when they moved him there in Pittsburgh.
Hmm.
So,
Interesting.
yeah, just
I for some reason my memory has me being. I remember the guard aspect, but for
mhm.
some reason I want to recall that he did play some center.
Right.
But
He
you
may
know,
have. I mean, Cowher's the book has a couple small things that are incorrect, so maybe he did, but he was predominantly at least a guard in Detroit. Doesn't mean much, but thought interesting,
right.
maybe parallel there. All right, back to the questions here. Garrett talking about DeCastro. I think listen to Dr. Mel's terrible take from the other day. I think she kind of sums it up pretty well. Benor is here. Hello, Benor. Thank you for being here as always. So is AJ. An ultimate elite mutated genome asks, "Hey Alex, will COVID restrictions affect your ability to do what you need to do this year at training camp?" I don't believe so, but let's make sure they're actually going to Latrobe first because that's still not guaranteed. I believe it'll happen, but nothing has been made official yet. And I don't have any interaction. I'm not trying to get autographs from players, so that's not going to happen, assuming they are at Latrobe this year. But as long as they let me to sit there in the stands or anywhere, then I should be okay. So that should not be impacted, assuming there are no unexpected curveballs in protocol. Next question here comes from Mark Ralston. It says, Dave broadcasting live from Fremont Street. Is that where you're at? Are you on location,
Oh
Dave?
no, 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 no! I'm at the house. Boy, it's been over. It's like been like 112, 115
Mm,
degrees and all like that. We did actually week ago Saturday go down to Fremont Street. Obviously, the new Circa is down there. Incredible new casino, the sports book there. Absolutely amazing. Great new casino down there in the heart of downtown Las Vegas. But no, Fremont Street. We try to go down to Fremont Street maybe twice a year, I think, and go take all that in there. But no, not broadcasting live from there today. No.
Question here: do you think Najee Harris is a good pick? And this question comes from username Najee Harris. So there's a appropriately app. Don't believe it's the real guy. Short and simple answer. I would say yes. I think they got a talented player at a position of need and still decent value overall. I know you can debate about other positions and other areas of need, offensive line, etc. But they got a talented player and they needed a starting running back. So yeah, I think it's a good pick.
My view on Najee has been really right out of the chute that he was the number one running back in this year's draft class, and that if indeed the Steelers were going to go about the way of picking a running back in the first round, not one of my favorite things to do, but if they were going to do that, they needed to get a running back that could function in all three phases of the game, be an all around back, be able to function in the passing game, pass protect, all 9 yards. If they're going to go that way, then that's the kind of back that they need to draft. And that's the type of back that they got in Najee Harris. Now we just wait and see how things go from there. I mean, it's
Hmm.
hard not to be excited about him.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you look at his tape and you look at his successful run rate and you look at the way he caught the football out of the backfield, you look at his pass protection tape, you look at his 10-yard run percentage. I mean, how and then you look at the Steelers' run success rate and the last 2 years. So uh, time will tell. I mean, it all matches up as far as what they should have got and what they got, and now we'll just have to wait and see.
Yep. Now it's all about just what he does on the football field. Mike Adesso with a question about DeCastro, but not about the current state of David DeCastro, the longer term outlook and outcome of David DeCastro says, is DeCastro a future Hall of Famer? If not yet, what does he need to do to get there 2 or 3 more Pro Bowl seasons? That's a good question, Mike. I see you guys talking about it in the comments. I think he's close. I don't have the number of Pro Bowls and All Pros he's made pulled up here offhand. It's a high bar though for offensive linemen to get in. You have to really have some pretty strong numbers. Even Marquise Pouncey, I think he could get in, but I think if he does, it'll take quite some time. Obviously, Alan Faneca took 6, 7 years to get in and was a finalist 6 times before he finally got the nod. So it's unfortunately, because it's such a position that doesn't have stats and isn't really, the highlight skill positions like a receiver and running back and quarterback, obviously, it is tough to get in unless you are like a 10-time Pro Bowler, 8-time All Pro kind of guy. So maybe, but if he makes another Pro Bowl or two, another All Pro team, obviously that would increase his chances.
You and I had that conversation about similar conversation about Marquise Pouncey. I think somebody wrote in and asked either last podcast or podcast before that and all. And man, it's just so tough with interior offensive linemen. Right now, David DeCastro, 2 first-team All-Pros, a second-team All-Pro, which really nobody, I don't, it needs to be looked at, but I don't think a lot of people do. And then six-time Pro Bowler right now. Uh, I mean, I think to give himself a chance, and by chance I mean 5 years, 6 years after he's retired, I think he needs another All Pro and another Pro Bowl
Hmm.
in there at least, and then go from there. I mean, I'm not trying to say the guy's not worthy. I'm just trying to tell you, people ask, do we think, X player will get in? I mean, when you look at history and specifically at the interior, I mean, my God, look how long it took Alan Faneca,
Right.
and that guy highly decorated and what missed uh, one game, due to injury, and the other one I think he was sat down, right, week 17
Hmm.
or week 16 or 17 game or whatnot, because the Steelers had something clinched along those lines. And then also this is a guy that got shafted another. Probably more than likely he lost out on another first team All Pro because of him being an unselfish player and switching playing some tackle that one season that I wrote about as well too. He could have said, "Hell no, I'm staying where I want to play. Where I'm best at guard. Got another All Pro, and he probably wouldn't have had to wait to get in the Hall of Fame so long in that. So when you look at Faneca alone as a case study, and you look at DeCastro and where he's at right now, I think DeCastro needs at least, like I said, another first team All Pro, another Pro Bowl, and then a lot of a lot of luck
Right.
and praying.
And a weak class 1 year for sure. Yeah, I
Right.
think I think if he would have retired today, hypothetically, he would not make it into the Hall of Fame. So that's my short answer for you there, Mike.
I mean, I
Let's.
love the guy. I remember distinctly that year that he came out, out of Stanford. Up, he said, "Oh man, he's not going to fall. No
Hmm.
way the Steelers get David DeCastro that year." And I said, never and knows a long, long time." And sure enough, he fell, and guard good interior offensive linemen sometimes do in the first round of draft, especially back then. I was pleased to punch. You know how I am about guards that can get out on the hoof and move, and you know, uh, but I still think it's an uphill battle for him right now from where we sit, at
Hmm.
least currently.
Yeah, I'm with you. Get about another half hour with Dave and I answering any and all of your Steelers questions. So be sure to ask in the chat below and have a super chat in here right on cue from Soulcraft. I think it's a new name, so appreciate your being here, Soulcraft, with the $5 super chat. Asks, what are the odds we sign Malik Hooker? It's hard for me to put a number to it. He's taken other visits, so he's been with Miami and Dallas, and those are certainly possibilities. And the Steelers probably not offering more money than those two teams, so I'm not quite sure. Maybe a 30% chance. Now he did say he wouldn't sign with a team until after the birth of his daughter, and according to his Instagram story, he did have the birth of his daughter, I think, over the weekend. So congrats to everyone. Everyone seems to be happy and healthy. So I guess he's now officially in play to sign at any moment. But he would get to come back home, and I'm sure that is attractive to him. He's a Newcastle product, so there's a chance, I would say. So I'll put it at 30%. But I mean, it's a pretty arbitrary number.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, any type of injury could change that. I think some of these guys are better suited right now, especially this time of year. I mean, there's no mini camps going on. What good does it do a player right now at this point to sign a minimum veteran benefit contract at this time of year right now,
Hmm.
unless they know for a fact that they're going to be a starter. I think some of these guys, the Trey Turners, the Malik Hookers, are better off. They've made it this far. Why not finish up whatever rehab either one of those guys has, and then wait and maybe see if an injury happens during training camp. I mean, they're already pretty much going to get a minimum salary as it is. Maybe they can maybe an injury will dictate them getting a little bit more than the minimum, or one of those up to contracts. Based on amount of snaps or postseason honors or anything along those lines there. Yeah, I mean with Malik Hooker, I mean for the minimum, I mean no team, I don't, assuming he makes it back from this Achilles, which is tough to do, but at least Kevin Durant gave everybody hope that suffers an Achilles injury. A professional athlete can make it back from that. But I don't think there's a team in the NFL right now that can go wrong by signing Malik Hooker for a 1 year veteran benefit contract.
Hmm.
And that includes the Steelers. But on the flip side, I think guys like Malik Hooker, some of these more experienced, guys with nothing but upside, I think they'd be better served to kind of wait a little while longer. So I don't know, 25-30% chance the Steelers sign him, I guess.
Right. AJ Gavin Anthony says, was Trey Turner's issues last season in LA because he was playing hurt? I'm sure that's part of it. He talked about COVID as well, but the issue with Turner is the injuries were not new to last season. He's had again, he's not played a full season since 2016. He's had multiple concussions and a lot of ailments. And so you could say that yeah, last year was impacted by health, but you could say that unfortunately about a lot of years when it comes to Trey Turner. And that's the reason why he's still a free agent.
I don't know how much tape you look like he'd lost a lot of that aggressiveness that we're used
Mm,
to Trey Turner having. When
right.
you look at some of his later season tape after after he came back from that from that groin injury. But once again, look, with the COVID restrictions
Hmm.
and all that kind of stuff, you know, maybe he had, maybe his groin rehab wasn't like a normal growing rehab because maybe some of restrictions or whatnot.
True.
But I mean, this guy, sooner or later, Father Time is undefeated here, and there are some snaps like he was not good. I mean, he had
Mm,
top to bottom. His tape last season was not good.
right.
So once again, was that related to maybe ability to train properly after the injury? I don't, nobody really knows that. But I tell you what, I wouldn't invest a lot of money to find out.
Mhm. Right, for sure. I would not either. Yeah, could it be that he was with a new team because he got traded over from Carolina, the way that BJ Finney had that issue adjusting and training and health and all that kind of stuff, possibly. But it is a concern that Carolina tried to trade him and then did trade him, and the Chargers tried to trade him and then cut him. So two teams, his last two teams in the last two seasons have shipped him and then or chopped him, and then one team traded him and the one team cut him. So that's not a great sign for your free agent market and future value. Logan Bainsaw says, who has a better shot at the 53, Shakur Brown or Mark Gilbert? Love the channel. Thanks for being here, Logan. I'll go Shakur Brown. I think better special teamer, better run defender, better tackler, more versatility, and a bigger need at that slot corner spot than the outside spot in the sense of there are more options maybe on the outside than there are in the slot right now. I just think Brown is the better prospect. I think Gilbert has some interesting tape and had a really good year several seasons ago, I think 2017 with Duke, and had like 5, 6 picks, and there's some talent there as well. So I'm not discounting Mark Gilbert, but between those two choices, I'm going Shakur Brown.
Yeah, and I think Shakir Brown's the much better tackler, right? I
Yeah,
mean, Gilbert Sticky, I think, is the term that Owen used not too long ago here. But when it comes to anything outside of coverage, there, I think there's a lot, lot to be desired there. So you want to see one or maybe one or two of these undrafted guys at least get in there and make it, and specifically a defensive back or two, if at all possible. There, so yeah, and obviously we haven't seen any of these guys in Steelers uniform in preseason and all, but I would think Shakir Brown has the best chance of those two.
yeah, but once training camp begins, it's a clean slate for me, and whoever plays well, and that's ultimately the only thing that matters. Garrett Slingerland says, should J.C. Hassenauer be looked at as the starting center? Talked about B.J. Finney not
Oh
being
Lord,
a
no.
year away, and Kendrick Green being, well, very green, so to speak. I get that, Garrett, I do, but man, if you want this offensive line to improve, if you want your running attack to be better than last season, I mean, how can you justify and say that Hassenauer is going to help you get there? Maybe there's a small benefit because he's more familiar and he's a little more maybe ready than B.J. Finney is, but he's not going to upgrade your line. He's not going to make your line better. He might, he's just going to make it just pretty below average. He's I think a better center than he is a guard, and so that would help a little bit. But no, I think that it comes down to Finney, and I think Kendrick Green's still likely your week one starter.
You have to look at the bars, I think, versus the investment that you have here. And if
Hmm.
you have a third round draft pick invested in a guy in Kendrick Green, uh, unless he's just, I mean, just cannot grasp anything, uh, then then maybe you made a wrong mistake that way. But the bar for him to clear is Finney and Hassenauer. And if he can't clear that bar by the time training camp winds up, I think you really need to question maybe why you drafted him where you drafted him.
Yeah, I
So
would say though is that he is he did declare a year early, and he is still making kind of a full time adjustment to center, and so those are two things that might be holding him back a little bit, which you could understand.
yeah, I still think he should win that job and
Right.
win it outright. Yeah,
No,
and
I understand.
even if it's close and he's behind, I give him the nod to get him in there.
Yeah. Got a couple super chats here, so we'll get to them right now. Appreciate all the support, guys. Really, really kind of you. Double HH asks, if today's Supreme Court ruling gets traction and NCAA athletes would need compensation, what would you think the impact would be on the NFL? I don't think there'd be much of an impact, to be honest with you. I'm not sure in what way it could impact it if players start getting paid for likeness and things like that. So I think the impact there would be pretty minimal. And Double HH with another super chat for $15 says, "Oops, meant to give more. You certainly did not have to, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
I wish I had a better answer for you on your question there. But I just don't think it's gonna impact the NFL game. I'm not even sure in which way it possibly could. Maybe I'm just not thinking about this enough because I haven't thought about it a ton. But what do you think, Dave? Would that have any sort of impact?
Yeah, I haven't given it much thought outside of I have given it thought as far as my own selfish thoughts go, and my own selfish thoughts is that the NCAA should have some, or at least in each individual colleges or conferences, I should say, should have some sort of all 22 service that
That's where your head's at.
that they allow us to subscribe to, and then they share some of that. Then they share some of that with the college athletes. I think so. Outside of thinking about my own personal gain by being able to watch, to pay a fee to be able to watch, say all the SEC, all 22. That's probably as far as I've gotten with it. But I understand it. Look, I mean, but you do give these kids a scholarship, right? Where does the trade-off end? You know,
Hmm.
of giving a kid a scholarship versus being able to use their likeness and be able to make money. That's been an argument that's been going on for since I was a kid, I
Right.
think. And all like that. Other than I don't see it impacting. I mean, a lot of these kids, let's face it, a lot of these kids make pretty good bank while they're in college,
Yeah.
regardless, whether it be above the ground or below the ground. So I just think it might just add a level of legality to a lot of that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, I support it. I'm totally cool with it. I think players should get compensated. I mean, my idea, and I know this is just my idea, so take it with a grain of salt, is that I think any player whose likeness is used, so if you're using promotional type stuff and marketing and any jerseys that are being sold or whatever the case is, if your direct likeness is being used, then you should get compensated for that. Some sort of percentage, what that is, I don't know, but something like that. So that way, I think it takes care of the argument of, well, okay, do you pay all the athletes? And the answer to that would be not necessarily. Only the ones whose likeness are using. If schools don't want to pay, then they don't get to use your likeness and use your stuff in promotions. And if that's how a school wants to market itself, they can, but probably a bad idea for them to do it. But in terms of the actual impact, I doubt it'll have much, and we'll see what happens in the future. And I'm just rooting for it from my selfish perspective is that I want them to come out with another NCAA football game because it's been too long. So I think that is a better chance than your whole all 22 thing. I think it's a pipe dream that I wish would come true, but I don't think will ever happen.
Well, I would appreciate you putting more effort into wanting what I want before, because I think we would benefit
I
greatly
think so.
from it as a site. So I'm going to have to ask you to put your own wants a little bit
All right.
behind my own wants there, and write a couple of strongly worded letters to the NCAA asking for all 22. Thank you.
It seems like the reverse is happening. I haven't followed it super closely, but I think there's been some suspensions on Twitter about like old college all 22 tape or something. I'm not sure what's going on there, but I think they're going in the wrong direction with that stuff, which I think is just stupid in the first place, but whatever. Dean with the $5 super chat says, "Thanks for all the videos. Great analysis, guys. You make the offseason entertaining. Thank you, Dean. How is Coach Clem going to coach this O line to be passable?" That's a good question. It's a broad question. I mean, first it starts with the mentality and physicality and just being more aggressive and dominant at the point of attack. So that's kind of where it has to start. But Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the offensive line has the most number of unknown to it and question marks, and just can you get this unit to play as a unit? We're so hyper focused on the individual guys like a core four and Green and DeCastro and Banner, etc. But how do you play as a collective starting five is maybe even the bigger question and determining factor for how good or poor this O line is. So can you play as a singular unit? If Clem can do that, then this unit will be passable and probably better than that.
A lot of questions on this offensive line. I mean, it all sounds good this time of year coming out of OTAs and look. I mean, it's been the common message is almost since day one: aggressiveness, attack, attack,
Hmm.
attack. But on the flip side, I think Clem. Look, it can't be understated. I don't think. He's a product of Dante Scarnecchia, and
Right.
that guy was not only known for having some aggressive offensive lines, but fairly technical sound as well too. Aggressiveness will only get you so far. I mean, there's got to be some line, some level of technical aspect that you achieve in the NFL. You just can't just throw any big guy over there and say attack and get the job done there. So uh, I don't know how to answer the question other than saying it's obviously something that we're going to watch from week one on, and luck hopefully you have a back in there that can help overcome some of that. Growing pains, if you will, and I'm excited about Kevin Dodson. I don't think there's anybody that shouldn't be as excited about that guy. But I mean, obviously, outside of that, you got Okorafor moving from over to left tackle, even though that is his natural side. So there is some reason to be a little bit more optimistic, I think, about him alone there. You go back to Banner, even though it was, I don't know, 40 or 50 snaps, forget how many snaps he played
Hmm.
last season before he went down injured. At least that wasn't bad tape.
Right.
So assuming he can come back from that, and then if DeCastro could just get back to 80% of what DeCastro was before, I think you're in good shape there. And then that obviously leaves a guy like Kendrick Green and the growing pains that you'll probably go through with him
Hmm.
inside. But make no mistake about it, the offensive line is going to be something that we talk about, throughout the season.
Yeah, to me, it is the X factor. Quick sidebar here. Interesting article that Matthew wrote this morning that James Washington named the 16th best receiver in college football history the last 50 years. I did not expect that, but didn't I forget how good of a college career Washington had at Oklahoma State. It was really, really productive, and I'm sure you remember that well in your
Oh,
tape
man, I
study
watched
days.
I watched all 200,
Yeah.
and I mean, I forget how many at this point, but I spent all that off season. Man, I became a damn Oklahoma State fan somehow. I think watching all that Rudolph and Washington tape along those lines. Now, granted, not a lot of press coverage, a lot of man coverage that James Washington had to worry about beating in that conference and all like that, but. Man, he made a lot of big plays. A
Hmm.
lot of
He
big
did.
plays. All that said, I think that's a little strong of a ranking there, to be honest with you. And I obviously highly enjoyed his tape coming out of Oklahoma State, but man, that's a little
Mhm.
strong.
It felt high, but I don't have the knowledge base to know how to rank it. So interesting there. Want to skip ahead here just because the infamous Tim says finally caught the stream. One question: if you were the commissioner for a year, what changes would you make? Love the channel. Keep up the good work. I don't know what changes I would make in a serious answer. My jokey answer is fix NFL Game Pass and make it work properly all the time. In terms of actual changes to make with the structure of the NFL, I mean, I would just do things that would help out the fringe players. I think they've been so just screwed over time and time again with a reduction of preseason games and training camp practices, and didn't have rookie tryouts last year. And I get that because of COVID, but just the overall like just lack of opportunity these guys continue to lose almost every single year. Where the unit doesn't care about those guys, and the NFL doesn't care about those guys, and no one cares about those guys, and they just have such an even tougher path to the NFL. And so it's harder and harder to find those undrafted, gems and diamonds in the rough. So I would do things that would give those guys more of an opportunity with expanded rosters and practice squads and stuff like that. Is my serious answer there, Tim.
Yeah, but the thing about that though is it's just not the commissioner just can't wave the wand to do that. I mean, this has
Right.
got to
Well,
be this has got to be an NFLPA and this has got to be an organized effort there.
I'm not going to be actually commissioner, so I'm going to pretend like I Because if I'm ever commissioner, then
Okay.
something's gone terribly awry that I've been put in that role.
And look, I mean, I get it and I don't get it. I mean, a person in authority. I mean, there's not many commissioners out there, maybe except for maybe the NBA one, current NBA one now that gets a lot of praise and all like that. But and I'm probably going to get a few rotten tomatoes thrown at me here. I think Goodell's done a fine job overall. I never liked the whole judge jury executioner aspect of him, but the Players Association let that went on. So
Hmm.
there are times I obviously thought that he didn't make the right decision. Now more, I think they now have the who are the ones in charge of laying down the decisions on
Yeah,
the
like Troy Vincent and
right,
those guys.
right.
Yeah.
And those things. Let's face it, man. The NFL does a great job of moving the calendar along. I
Hmm.
mean, they can turn almost anything into a televised event now too. You talk about combine, you talk about draft, you talk about schedule release, you talk. I mean, you just go on and on. I mean, right now we are beginning that 5 week stage where really it's about the only time of the year where really you don't have something that you're looking forward to maybe the next week or at least 2 weeks away there. So I think the NFL does a great job just in general of the way they have things set up, moving the calendar along there. So I can't name one thing I don't think that I would maybe do differently that I would be allowed to do if I was commissioner.
Right, and reportedly, I think Peter King had written this a couple weeks ago that the NFL is planning on maybe starting next year of having day one of training camps. It's now a uniform report day, being like a marquee event where it's like a national holiday, the way that NFL schedule releases and NFL draft is, where like that's going to be the main event as kind of the kickoff of the season. So that might be coming where they're going to continue to find ways to just basically start the season officially, unofficially, like earlier every single year. Want to get to a couple of questions here and just kind of speed through them because they came in earlier and I want to make sure we hit on them. The last Stylebender says, is it safe to say Dangerfield won't be a Steeler anymore? Yes, I think at this point it is safe to say. Could that change? Possibly, but not looking too good for Danger, which breaks my heart. Charlie Doyle says, do you think the O line will be one of the worst in the league this year? Not necessarily. I think there's potential there, but how well they will play as a unit, I think will be important. So it really could go either way at this point. And Reginald Rivers says, how many undrafted players will make the 53-man roster? I'll say at least one. Someone's going to emerge. One of those DBs, whether that's Brown or Gilbert or Steiner or Wade, somebody's going to step up there. So I'll say at least one, Reginald.
Yeah, I like that.
All right, let me scroll down here and find a couple of more questions here. Engler's tape says we've seen Marcus Allen convert from box safety to inside linebacker due to positional need. Could any defensive lineman or other linebackers convert to outside linebacker to solve the hole on the roster? I don't think so, unless like a Jameer Jones or Jaron Jones or whoever those two guys are, Jamar Miller, I think it is, can kind of have that flexibility. But I don't think there's really an established guy that's going to make that move.
No, I don't either there.
Let's see. Andresa, good to hear from you. If Dave is the Art Rooney of Depot, where does everyone else fall into place? And David O says, if Dave is the chief, then Alex is Dan. So am I Dan Rooney in your art? You need the
I
cigar. You need the cigar.
you giving me too much credit to mention me in the same sentence as the chief there.
Matthew Sudith says, what is your biggest concern on defense pressure from the outside linebacker position? Highsmith or DB, Sutton or Pierre? I would say just defensive back play in general. Some of the youth there, what young guys will step up. Hopefully someone does, but will that happen in injuries and sub-package roles, slot corner, dime? A lot of unknowns there. So I have concerns about both spots, to be honest, more about the depth at edge than I do have with Highsmith himself. But I'll say the DBs as a unit overall.
Yeah, and I think that's legitimate. And look, I mean, you're gonna have to find somebody to make sure that can play well along with Devin Bush, and hope Devin Bush is the same Devin Bush. You
Right.
know, there are, like it or not, there are a lot of questions about this defense, and it might not be huge questions at any one particular position, but it's enough of like four minor questions that lead to kind of one big
Hmm.
question about this defense. I think. I mean, you look back at last year and you look at the sack totals and you look at the adjusted net yards per passing attempt numbers. Those those are going to be hard. Those are going to be hard to equal, man. I mean, realistically, you have to think this defense is going to take a step backwards overall. The question I think becomes is how big a step backwards do they take, and can the offense help make up for the step that take backwards, and then what area are they taking the step backwards with? Maybe if you could shore up that run just a tiny bit, but it cost you a little bit, maybe a little bit in adjusted net yards per passing attempt. Maybe that's a fair trade-off, but I think overall it's just a lot of little questions about almost really all four positions. I mean, defensive line.
Hmm.
Can Tyson Alualu be the same person that he was? You look at outside linebacker. I'm less worried about Highsmith. I'm with you. I'm more worried a little bit about depth there at the position, because those guys are going to need some plays off.
Yeah.
You worry about, can Devin Bush be the same player, pick up where he left off in Week 6 last year? Who's going to play alongside Devin Bush? And then Mike Hilton was a hell of a loss, and that's a question mark that most certainly needs to answer what this team's going to do in nickel and dime
Hmm.
situations.
Absolutely. 111 people here in the chat. Thank you guys so much. We're going to
Thank
wrap
you.
up here in a couple minutes, but I want to get to a few more questions, so be sure to stick around and ask any final questions. Maybe Dave and I can speed through them real quick before my power goes out, because it's storming pretty good here
Whew.
right now. Jeff Rossi says, can Yins remember a year where the Steelers' national media versus local media forecasted finish was so far apart? National media expecting us to finish last versus some in Pittsburgh are thinking deep run. I'm not sure who in Pittsburgh's thinking that. I'm sure some are. Um, Probably this is probably the largest disparity, because generally the national media has always been, Steelers, they're going to be good, they're going to be stable, consistent, and that's changed a bit this year with the collapse last season, and Ben potentially being in his last year. So that might be accurate, Jeff, but to be honest, I pay very little attention to that kind of stuff. I don't think about that stuff too often or dwell on it. I'll see some of it, of course, because you write about it sometimes, but I just pay little mind to it. So there probably is a bigger disparity there, but to me, I mean, it doesn't mean a whole lot to me, and it probably doesn't mean much to you either. But I just don't put a lot of stock into it and thinking about it and comparing, contrasting this year versus past years.
Wait, there's a lot of local media thinking the Steelers will make a deep run.
Yeah, I don't. Have you gotten that sense? I haven't gotten that sense, but again,
I
I don't
haven't
I
gotten
don't I
that.
don't read this stuff, so
They must hate me. I think this is maybe I think 9-8 might win the division overall. I mean, you and I have said since last year, we thought last year was the best shot at
Mhm.
at the Steelers to win a championship. So uh, I firmly believe that, and if you are going to firmly believe that, you have to think that based on the schedule and based just on everything in general, that there there's a you know the general feeling, at least where I'm concerned, is this team is not going to be as good as they were last year. So
Right.
to what degree? I mean, I don't think they're going to be 5-12.
Mhm.
Obviously, but I do think this is a team that we're gonna we're gonna wonder if they're gonna hit that 8.5 to 9 win number.
Speaking of national media, do you know what national media member I saw at a Pirates game this weekend? It was
No,
a
who?
Pittsburgh favorite. Peter King was there.
Oh,
Everyone, I should have yelled at him for not voting in Troy to the Hall of Fame, but I didn't.
how'd you enjoy the first ball game you've been to a while, right?
Yeah, well, obviously you couldn't get it last year. Yeah, and they won, so that was good. That was a really nice get
Oh.
out there. I hope to get out to PNC Park more times before camp starts. Got more questions here. Your friendly sports channel says, I have a question. How confident are you in Najee Harris in 2021? I'm confident. I think he'll have a good season. Obviously, partially dependent on offensive line play and those types of things, but I think Harris is a good player, and I think he'll have a good season.
Yeah, if he stays healthy, I mean, obviously should set a lot of rookie running back records. I think from yards from scrimmage, and once again, if he does stay healthy, he gets to kind of 300 touches, 310, 320 touches that a lot of us think that he can get. I think there's an outside chance he makes a run for rookie of the year. Obviously, it depends on what one or two of them quarterbacks wind
Hmm.
up doing there, but once again, I mean, he should have the touches, and those touches should equate to, I don't know, at least 1,500 total yards from scrimmage. And if he hits that, and if none of those quarterbacks blow up this year, I think he's got a legitimate chance to be rookie of the year, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, hope he is. Tate Boy says, is DeCastro going to play this season? I will say yes. I'm sure, Dave, you probably agree on that.
I have no reason to think he won't right now. I
Yeah.
mean, there's it's just idle Twitter sometimes is
Hmm.
good and bad. It gives people voices that don't deserve voices, But
Right.
it nobody knows nothing right now. So because of that, there's no reason to think that he won't be
Hmm.
ready by the start of the season. But once again, it could be some sort of it could be something that he might have worked on that maybe has him behind.
Sure.
I don't know, but just the objective logical way to look at it right now until we know more is to think that he should be ready for the start of the season.
And Bills Mafia is in the chat here, Dave. That was Lucas saying that the Bills are winning Week 1. So hello,
Okay.
Lucas. Thanks for being here.
They'll definitely be favored.
Yeah. Hey, let's see if any other questions. Russ
I
Openstein.
I think that sets up. Look, if for somehow, some way, and obviously the Steelers, I think 6.5 point dogs in that game, and obviously on the road, I mean, a tough chore to beat that team in week
Hmm.
one. If they do, I think that could go down as one of the biggest wins of Mike Tomlin's career. To be honest with you, if you think about it in totality, especially when it comes to early season type wins.
Um, Yeah, let's just hope they get the win. I mean, how you can view it, however it can be viewed. I just want to get the victory and get off to a good start to the season. So, Russ Obenstein was asking about: is there confidence? Do we have confidence in James Pierre? I'm starting to, but I want to see it in the summer, obviously in preseason. There's potential there. I think there's some talent. The team obviously likes him. I think he's the odds-on favorite right now to be that starting right cornerback in sub package. But let's see if it translates that good spring to a good summer.
So far, so good.
Right. Let's see. Any other questions? I think there was one more I wanted to get to here. Let's see. This was from Mike. Wow, he's saying that Jalen Twyman was shot 4 times. Wardis will be fine. That's the rookie from Pitt. Wow, that's some pretty crazy news. And
Say again?
Jalen Twyman. I'm just reading first time I'm reading this here from Mike Odessa was shot 4 times. Wardis he'll be fine.
Huh.
Amazingly. It's all the information I know right now. And Mike was also asking if Chris Paul had an update yet, and I think the Suns are about to release that soon. But no change to my knowledge right now. So I believe that is all the questions here. Really good turnout. I was really impressed and pleasantly surprised by the turnout for the live stream. So appreciate that. Thank you for all the super chat donations. We read all those questions. Really appreciate the support. I'll have some new videos and content ideas on the channel before training camp as well. So thank you guys for being here. And Dave Bryan, as always, thank you for being here as well.
Thank you for having me. We'll be working on some content on Steelers
Hmm.
Depot, obviously, to keep everybody entertained the next 5 weeks. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. Peace of love. Peace of love. Be careful.
Be sure to subscribe if you have not already to the channel to look for future Steelers Q&A live streams. If you missed part of this stream or want to go back, it'll be archived on my channel in a little bit. Also get posted over here on screen to Steelers Depot shortly as well. So thank you guys for being here, and we'll talk to you soon.